Blessings, good evening to you all. So it's a Tuesday night. Our lockdown program means that's time for Dhamma discussion, Q&A. What better way to spend lockdown than meditating, chanting, listening to Dhamma, discussing the Dhamma? If you're not going to do it now, you're not going to do it at all, are you? Sometimes it requires crisis situation to get us to practice. So there are some good things that come out of lockdown. The first question tonight, Dear Ajahn, how do I deal with sleepiness when I try meditating after a day at work? Well, you're not alone. I think every single person who's ever meditated will have to have dealt, and maybe dealt many times, with sleepiness. Not just lay people, monks as well. Everybody has to come to terms with the sleepiness experience, if only briefly, sometimes constantly for a whole meditation session. This citta, this mind, loves to have something to hold on to, an object. Sometimes they say it's like an old man who needs a walking stick to lean on. So when we come to meditate, especially after a day's work where we've been putting forth effort in our work, traveling, using our brain, even in lockdown, you still, if you're working online, working from home, you're still using energy in that way. Suddenly to come to an end of that, and to sit down, bring your mind to practice mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the body or other meditation objects. It's a big jump in our experience, and the level of stimulation prompting the mind suddenly disappears, and now we're just sitting still quietly, maybe in a darkened room, with our eyes closed. So it's like that old man, you suddenly pull away the walking stick so you'll fall over. And that's like the mind falling into drowsiness. It's not stimulated enough. So we have to make the Dhamma stimulating. As I said, everyone suffers from this, laity and monks, nuns. So there's a famous teaching the Buddha once gave to Venerable Mahamoggallana. On our shrine behind me, when you see the bigger picture of our hall, you'll see there's two statues of monks either side of the Buddha with their hands in Anjali facing the Buddha. And on the right of the Buddha is Venerable Sariputta, who was known for his wisdom, foremost in the wisdom faculty. And on the left of the Buddha, Venerable Mahamoggallana, foremost in the practice and training of the mind, in samadhi, and development of abhinya, psychic powers, special knowledges. But during the period that Venerable Mahamoggallana was newly ordained and hadn't yet fully established his skills with the practice of samadhi, he actually was bothered by sleepiness, just like the rest of us. So it's comforting to know that the monk who became foremost in the practice of samadhi still had sleepiness as an obstacle, a hindrance during his training. And so the Buddha gave him some instructions, like step-by-step sequence of instructions, what to do, like a strategy or a plan, what to do if sleepiness comes on. And the first thing the Buddha pointed out was, well, Don't put your mind on the perception. Don't pay attention to the perception that leads to sleepiness. So if you practice meditation regularly, you'll notice as you become sleepy, there are steps along the way to that state of sleepiness. There's signs, warning signs. So you might sit down, start paying attention to your body, to the breathing, for example. And because you're tired, maybe you're physically tired and also mentally tired, your mindfulness drops. You stop paying attention to the breath or reciting the word Buddha, and your mind starts attending to something else. So it may be a feeling, just the relaxed feeling in the body, very similar to when we go to sleep at night, lie down to fall asleep. Or it may pay attention to a daydream that comes into the mind, takes the mind away from the breath, and we start drifting, just like a boat drifting on the sea without anyone in charge. The mind starts drifting into that daydream, and then drowsiness comes on. So as you practice, you become more aware of this, where the mind, the preceding experience prior to becoming sleepy, drowsy, comes up. Feelings, thoughts, perceptions. So if you're very sharp, you may notice that, and you can turn your mind away from those perceptions back to the breath quickly. Literally wake yourself up before you fall asleep. That may include opening your eyes, sitting up straight, taking deep breaths, and so on, to arouse energy and to take your mind away from the perception of drowsiness and the dullness of mind and the attachment to the comfort in the body as you're falling asleep, and so on. Then he said, if that's not working, recite some Dhamma in your mind, recollect Dhamma teachings that you've heard, that you know about. So it could be chanting that you know, or a verse of Dhamma, or a teaching you've heard, remembered, or it could be a Dhamma theme. You just quietly go over that in your mind to stimulate the mind with Dhamma, to stave off drowsiness, sleepiness. If that's not working, then he said, actually recite out loud. So chanting is a very good antidote to sleepiness, and chant out loud. The Buddha said, chant loudly, recite loudly. Don't be shy, don't be embarrassed, because you're doing a wholesome thing. So even if other people are looking at you chanting, don't be embarrassed, because you're bringing up a wholesome state of mind, overcoming the hindrance of sleepiness. So chant out loud or recite Dhamma that you know. If that's not working, you can get physical. He said, rub your earlobes, pull your earlobes, rub your eyes. Maybe by extension you could say stretch. Stretch your arms out, maybe stretch your neck, your head. He said, look up at the stars if you're outdoors, or through the window maybe. All these simple techniques can wake you up at a time when you're just becoming drowsy. If that's not working, then get up. Actually stand up, maybe even go outside. And in this weather, here it's very cold where we are, that really wakes you up. You go outside and do some walking meditation. If you can't go outside, we'll walk in your room. Just a few paces may be enough to wake you up. Just walk back and forth, inside or outside, to wake yourself up. And if all fails, none of that works, then maybe go to sleep, have a rest. But before you fall asleep, make a determination in your mind that when you wake up in the morning, say, you're going to carry on your meditation practice. So we do have to accept sometimes we're totally exhausted, and maybe the best thing is have a rest and then continue later. So these are some of the steps the Buddha gave, and you can see there's some room for experimentation there to find out what works for you to wake you up, make you more mindful of your posture, your body, bring your mind back to the breath, or to stimulate it with Dhamma recollections or chanting. Oh, one I forgot actually, there was one other perception the Buddha said, bring up the perception of light. And that's something Ajahn Chah used to encourage us to do, is if you're falling asleep, we'll light a candle in front of you and focus on the light of the candle, because light brightens the mind, and that brightening of the mind is like, the sun coming up in the morning. It wakes you up, gives you the perception of light, whereas sleepiness gives you the perception of darkness. So either use an electric light or a candle in front of you, say, for example, and the light you focus on. If you really intent on it, you can practice memorizing that light, then closing your eyes and see if you can remember the light, the color of it, the shape, the brightness of that light. And that can also work very well. So there's a whole range of practices you can experiment with to see what works for you with working with sleepiness. And of course, just basic qualities such as effort, patient effort, endurance, and not giving up. And one thing you'll notice, if you ever get through sleepiness, you manage to establish mindfulness, wake yourself up, you feel very bright and very happy that you managed to overcome that hindrance. And you tend to remember that, and it gives you a lot of confidence to keep coming back and doing it again. Because you know you've done it before, then you can do it again. So it can actually be a boost to your practice where you work with sleepiness and get through it. The second question tonight, Dear Ajahn, will I ever experience Samadhi in this life? Well, actually, you could answer yes, because we've already got Samadhi. Samadhi means firmness of mind, the mind that is well established, firm, steady, unwavering, has one-pointedness, singleness of mind. But as we've just chanted in the teaching on the Eightfold Noble Path, there are levels of Samadhi or depths of Samadhi. And because we've heard the talks and read the books, we're always aiming for the highest level of jhana, deep jhana. That's what we tend to think of as Samadhi. So then, of course, our more modest levels of Samadhi that we've already attained and have in our life, we often dismiss as it doesn't count. We underestimate it, but actually we all have Samadhi already. It's just a part of the mind, of the normal functioning mind of a normal human being. It's just it's not well developed yet, perhaps, if we're new to the practice of meditation. But you can build on it. So you already have Samadhi. The teaching I remember from Ajahn Buddhadasa, which is kind of humorous, when I was a young monk, we'd go to see Ajahn Buddhadasa, a colleague or friend of Ajahn Chah, contemporary of him, and he would say, you need as much Samadhi to practice the Dhamma as you do to tie up your shoelace. And we'd always laugh because monks don't wear shoes with laces, we wear flip-flops and sandals. So the monks would always laugh, but we got the point. Literally, you need enough to be able to pay enough attention, enough Samadhi to stop, tie your shoelace. And you notice when you're in a rush, you don't want to tie your shoelace. When you're scattered, you forget to tie your shoelace. When you're talking to someone, you don't do it very well, and so on. You notice when you don't have much mindfulness or Samadhi, then you won't even tie your shoelace properly. But when you're paying attention to what you're doing, you can tie your shoelace. And you build on that. practice of mindfulness, of breathing that leads to states of samadhi is just built on moment by moment awareness of the in-breath, the out-breath, and building up that ability to pay attention to the breath, not let go of it, not ignore it, not get distracted away from it by the different hindrances. And it's about practice. The more you practice, then the more skilled you'll get at it, the more used to it you'll get, the more wisdom will arise that will help you to deal with hindrances, problems in your meditation, see what works through experimentation, through patient effort. And over time, hopefully you get better at it, and that samadhi will become stronger. And that is a big part of our practice, is learning to watch this mind, pay attention to our meditation object, so that we can contemplate and investigate the Dhamma. And the more you practice, hopefully you'll see it starts to develop. It may develop only slowly. Most of us have to be very patient with this. But it should develop if you keep putting effort in. Just as anything else in life. Another reflection I used to use a lot when I was a young monk is just how when we want to do something in life that means something to us, is valuable to us, is important to us, we'll put the effort in to learn how to do that thing. So for example, if you want to learn to drive a car, because that will give you the freedom to drive all over the place, unless you're in lockdown, of course, when you can only drive 5 kilometers. But if you want to drive a car, you'll learn, won't you? You'll put the effort in, you'll put the hours in, get your 120 hours or whatever it is. You'll make that effort because you want to drive. You may not find driving very interesting, you might not really like cars, but because you want to use a car, you'll invest that time and effort. Samadhi is like that. If you really want something, then you'll practice it. If you want to earn money, you go out, you learn a skill that will help you to get a job. And it may not be a job you really like or enjoy, but you'll do it because you want to earn money. And most of us have done that in our life. When I was young, I'd do temporary jobs. Most of them I didn't like as jobs, but I was willing to learn the skill of what I had to do that job to earn money. So we'll do many things for various goals, to achieve goals, study, work, all kinds of things that we may not necessarily find easy or like or be very good at, but we'll persist because we have a higher goal. And the Dhamma is just the same. We have the higher goal of freeing our mind from suffering. Therefore, we might develop the practice of developing states of calm and samadhi because we want the benefit that they'll bring. A mind that is calm, clear, steady, so we can understand and gain insight into the Dhamma. So don't give up. Another question. How do I deal with anxiety about the current lockdown and the future when I'm trying to find a job? It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's probably not the best time to be looking for a job, but we just have to accept the way things are. You can't choose and control the world and the economy and diseases and pandemics. We don't control any of these things. The world is is a very complex place with many causes and conditions manifesting every day. So you just have to make the best of the situation you find yourself in. We certainly sympathize with you if you're looking for a job at this time, because the economy is not at its best, opportunities are limited, and of course we have lockdowns coming and going. So just be patient with the situation and try and use your time well. If you're in the process of looking for a job, well, keep coming back rather than just getting anxious about when will I get a job, what kind of job can I get, will I ever get a job, come back to looking at what you need to do. Writing your CV, if that's the way you're going to do it, going out, making your applications online, in person. Do what you need to do to follow the path of looking for a job, and be patient with the rejections and the missed opportunities and the limited opportunities and so on. Don't focus so much on the problems and the slowness of it if you're not getting anywhere. Focus more on just creating the good causes, putting effort into your search on the one hand, and on the other hand, you may have a lot more free time while you're unemployed. Well, try and use that time well. Split it between your hunt for jobs and then using some of your free time to do good things. Maybe it's a time to do things in life that you would like to do when you're working, but you can't because you don't have enough time. So you can learn new skills, study new things, you can do volunteering maybe, you can do all kinds of activities that normally you might not have much time available for during that period where you're job hunting, which might make the time go quicker and help you to pass the time skillfully, learn new things, make new friends, so that it's not a time where you're just feeling depressed because you're not getting a job, but you're actually putting effort into doing good things. And you can do more chanting and meditation. You can, when people are between jobs or waiting for a job, well, that's a time to go on a retreat or stay in a monastery or try these things out because you've got the time available. And sometimes when you do good things, when you're unemployed or waiting for a job, you do volunteering or you go on meditation retreats, it can bring good results because you're making good karma, using your time well. That can have a knock-on effect and bring you job offers, and opportunities can arise, and your mind can become slightly improved, your state of mind, so then you are more creative and you can see opportunities where before you didn't see them or didn't think of them. So I know quite a few people over the years who have been looking for a job, not sure what to do, feeling depressed, and they go on a meditation retreat for 10 days, and after the meditation retreat the offer comes or some opportunity arises. So try to use your time well, make more good karma. It could be a time you look after family members or friends who are sick or in need of help. It's a time to renovate their house, time to do all these kind of other things that may be useful, and they can actually lead on to good ideas and good situations arising. As far as anxiety goes, that's also something you're learning in meditation, a bit like drowsiness. We get anxious because we put attention on the perception of anxiety, the fear, the worry, the concern about something. So it may be about not having a job. If you keep thinking about it, then of course you're going to feel worse. So practice mindfulness, be more aware of what your mind is doing. So when those anxious thoughts come up, catch them and teach yourself to turn your attention away to something more skillful, or use some wisdom to help you deal with it. You don't know when you'll get a job, you don't know what the future holds. Well, fine. Nobody knows. It's not only you. Nobody can know what the future holds. Nobody can predict or control the future because it hasn't happened yet. So when you have those sort of anxious thoughts about the future, tell yourself, it's not sure, it's not certain, I can't answer the question, so there's no point dwelling on it. Focus more on what's useful in the present moment. Bring your mind to the present moment and what you're doing right now, right here. meditation teaches you that skill, improves your level of mindfulness and the ability to reflect on your experience. So use that in your daily life. Whenever you are experiencing fear, anxiety, then catch it and bring up the mindfulness both to calm yourself in the present moment and then allow your wisdom to acknowledge the fear, the anxiety, but then also see it's a temporary mental state, a temporary feeling that you can let go of. And you keep teaching yourself to let go of it and not to believe it and get caught up in it, but actually to see it more as a mental state. It comes, it goes. It's not really you, it's not a person. It's just a mental state, and it's coming from unwise, unmindful attention that we're giving to those thoughts. So try and learn from that and let it go. Dear Lumpur, how should I practice when one of my parents is very sick overseas and I'm unable to be with them? Well, it's another very common experience, I think, in the world at this time with travel restrictions and lockdowns and so on. So it's not ideal, but sometimes, again, we just have to accept the way things are and work within the situation. So, with parents and relatives who are sick, if we're unable to physically be with them, well, we do the best we can. And, on the one hand, you could say, well, how lucky we are these days. We can do video calls and all kinds of online contact with them. So we do our best to, on the practical level, to make sure that they're being looked after and they get support and to keep in contact. These are kind of obvious things. Then on the personal level, well, continue your practice of Buddhism, because the more we improve our life and our state of mind through our practice, the more value we're giving to our life, and that's flowing back to our parents, and we can send our thoughts of metta, goodwill, to our parents when we meditate or when we chant. We can share our good wishes with them, and then when we talk to them, say on the phone if we can, or have a video call with them, our own well-being, wholesome states of mind we're developing through our practice will come through in our speech and our attitudes. It also helps us, the more we practice mindfulness and reflect on the Dhamma, it helps us to be creative in finding ways to help our parents, whether it's just the way to talk to them, what they might need, sharing Dhamma with them. So if you do have contact with them, even through video or telephone, then you can listen to the Dhamma with them, read Dhamma with them, discuss the Dhamma with them. And the more you practice for yourself and understand the Dhamma for yourself, the more you can share that with them. So even though you may feel physically separate and sad about that, it doesn't mean to say you stop practicing. You carry on practicing, and the good karma you're generating will help you and them in many different ways on different levels. And also, if you're practicing regularly, meditating, developing mindfulness, developing kindness, compassion, you can also heal any wounds, because often children and their parents have bad feeling, wounds, mistakes have been made, regrets over the past, things have been said and done. It's a time to really heal that. Even though you can't physically be with them, you can do that mentally in your practice so that you can have a more pure compassion for when you're talking to them or thinking of them. So, use it as a time to really remove all final regrets and ill will that may be lurking or stuck in the back of your mind. So we can practice on many levels, body, speech, mind. Even if we're not with someone, we can continue to practice for ourselves and then for them out of gratitude, appreciation. And we can bring that up in our meditation. We can have a meditation, of gratitude for our parent, appreciating all the good they've done, and also realizing that, if your parent is dying, that's the body, the physical body that is sick or dying. That's inevitable. Everyone must die. And your parent is more than that body. The body dies, but the citta, the mind, doesn't die, and the good karma they've made in their life that you can appreciate and remember, that doesn't die. It's the body that dies. And sometimes we're too obsessed with the material things of life, including the physical body, and we think of our sick parent and feel sad, depressed, but the good that they've done hasn't disappeared just because they're sick. And obviously you don't want pain and suffering for your parent, but the good that they've done and the good karma they've made with you and other people and for themselves, that's all still in place. And that's the real person, and the real goodness of the person is not in the physical body, it's in the mind. And your aspiration is that they go on to practice and free themselves from attachment, so they can free themselves from suffering, so they can follow the Buddhist path. So whether they're Buddhist or not, we can have that aspiration, send it in our meditation. We can make an aspiration, may my parent understand the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma. And the more we practice, then the more that's going to be a supportive condition for our parents' practice as well. Another question: how can I help the monks at this time when I'm unable to travel to the monastery during lockdown? Or you can help the monks by continuing with your practice. Make the world a better place. You don't just help the monks, you help yourself, you help everyone around you. The more you put in effort, you put into your practice, try to live with integrity, practice the precepts, practice generosity and kindness with the people around you, practice mindfulness, reflect on the Dhamma, listen to the Dhamma. All of the aspects of the Dhamma practice that we're developing is already helping the monks, helping others in society. So keep putting effort into that and just adjust to the situation. In lockdown you can't travel so much, so practice at home, and that's good as well. And practically speaking, there are still people coming to the monastery. They get permits from the committee to offer dana, so that there are a few. Or you can also send things via mail or courier. We really have enough here, I think, already, but if you wanted to do that to make some merit, you can do donations via the banks, you can send things. So you're not completely stuck, but I would focus mainly on your own practice. What is the best way to repay the Buddha or teachers or the Sangha is to practice the Dhamma. So even if you're not physically there to support monks, well, practice in your own place. So if you're helping your parents or your partner or your children or your friends or your colleagues in any way, you're helping the monks as well, because you're practicing what the Buddha taught and you're improving yourself as a human being. Spending time in meditation, listening to the Dhamma, just as we are now, this is helping the monks in the sense that you're taking the teachings of the Buddha, applying them in your life, benefiting from them, gaining from them. That's helping the monks also. So, in brief, carry on practicing. The last question today: when the breath is subtle in meditation, it is very easy to fall asleep. Previously, I think I would force the breath, and I found that approach to be okay. However, I think that the advised approach is to Watch the breath naturally as it arises and ceases. Is it okay to force the breath while meditating? Well, this question is similar to the first one about sleepiness, and I think you can see from the Buddha's teaching to Venerable Mahamoggallana, there's a room for experimentation here. And yes, quite a few meditators have used a kind of enhanced breath meditation, sometimes as their main meditation object. Breathe quite in a slightly exaggerated way. So, I believe in Burma it's quite a more well-known technique. So it's certainly not a technique that's forbidden or that you can't try. And if it works, like many aspects of meditation, if you found a technique that helps you and it seems to work, well, you can pursue it. And certainly if you have a tendency to drowsiness, the relaxed, natural breathing rhythm may well be sending you messages, these perceptions that say it's time to sleep. Yeah, it's a very common experience. Especially if you're meditating at this time in the evening after your whole day of work or activity, then to watch the breath often just sends you to sleep. So if you find taking shorter, more exaggerated breathing rhythms or so on helps to establish mindfulness, cut through sleepiness, well, try it. There's nothing wrong with it. Excuse me. Probably you'll find if you do that for a period of time, you might find it difficult to sustain for a long period. But that doesn't matter. What some meditators who use the breath have found is that they, for a period of time, they do a forced breathing technique to bring the mind's attention to the breath, to steady the mind, to wake it up, to bring mindfulness. And then as mindfulness is established and the factors of samadhi start to arise, the sustained attention on the object, rapture, happiness, one-pointedness might start to arise, then naturally the breath, the coarseness of the forced breathing technique will be clear to the mind, and you start maybe to go to a more natural rhythm. And that might happen quite by itself. It's maybe similar to the practice of recitation of Buddho. If you're reciting Buddho, 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 when all the factors of samadhi start to emerge, mind and body become calm, your attention is sustained, you're not sleepy, you're not distracted. You might reach a point where the mind feels it's correct to just let the recitation of Buddho go. And what's left is the awareness of the mind itself. And in the same way, if you have this more forced breathing technique, you may find that you reach a point where you've done it enough, and then you can go to a more subtle kind of level of or experience of the breath. But this is something to experiment with, and it's that experimentation is very valuable and can bring us a lot of understanding about the breath. So feel free to try it and just see what works. So those are the questions for today. We will end in a moment, pay respects to the Triple Gem, but for now, I'll just wish you all well in your practice of the path that the Buddha taught, whether it's a practice of dana, or sila, or bhavana. I would encourage you to use your time, especially if you have free time from lockdown, to put effort into your Dhamma practice rather than just seeking distractions or getting caught into kind of apathy, lethargy, laziness, and so on. Try to use the time well. for now, we'll give you a blessing. May the blessing of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha guide you and protect you, and we'll pay our final respects to the Buddha.